Good Monday morning, everyone. Here we are at week number 6. And this week we are learning more about DNA and inheritance patterns and also some biodiversity. So this will be a good week for us. Last week we learned about the structure of DNA, what it looks like, how it replicates, how it makes copies of itself, and then the process called mitosis, where a mother cell divides into two to make two exact copies of the original cell. That is mitosis, and the replication of DNA is part of mitosis. We learned about transcription and translation, and this is actually the job of DNA, to take the information in genes, which are segments of DNA, and turn those into proteins that the cells need in order to do all the biochemistry that's going on. Those proteins are called enzymes. So for this week, what are you going to learn about this week? Well, some meiosis, some Mendelian genetics, and some biodiversity, some epigenetics. We'll get into all this in the video here. The chapters that you need to look over are chapters 11 and 12, having to do with meiosis, which is a type of cell division which results in the decrease in chromosome number. So this is involved in making sex cells like sperm and eggs. Chapter 12 is all about inheritance patterns and Gregor Mendel. And then chapter 47 has to do with biodiversity. All of you are interested in this because you're interested in environmental science. So this is a really good chapter. Read the Module 6 overview and watch the videos. Hopefully the meiosis video will be corrected by the time you get in there and take a look at it, because the one right now won't open up. But the epigenetics video will. And this is very important for your discussion board postings this week, because you have to discuss epigenetics and the video, the mice in the video. So I'll touch on this again in just a minute. And also the argument nature versus nurture. This has been going on for a very long time. And we're still discussing it and trying to figure out how your genes affect who you become and how your environment affects who you become. We'll talk about this again in a minute. And then your journal entry is all about how bacteria reproduce. Now, I'm giving you a hint here. Go to chapter 22, section 2, and this will give you some information about how bacteria reproduce. They asexually reproduce. They just split in half. Okay, so you have two daughter cells that are just like the mother cell. All right, just like mitosis, right? Okay, but bacteria have to have the ability to change up their genetics. Otherwise, they would just die out. And so that's what you find in chapter 22, section 2. I'll give you some buzzwords here. Mutations, conjugation, transformation, transduction. These will all help you figure out the answer to the question about genetic variability in bacteria. You'll discuss asexual versus sexual reproduction. What are the benefits of each? What are the disadvantages of each? And you'll also discuss biodiversity and especially how sexual reproduction helps to ensure biodiversity. And you will discuss genetic erosion in agriculture. So what is happening to the species that farmers are using to produce corn, to produce cows, to produce pigs, to produce soybeans, to produce tomatoes? There is a genetic erosion of species in agriculture right now because certain species are selected for and certain subspecies are selected for. So are we losing valuable variants in the different species because of what we're choosing to produce right now? And this leads us into a little bit of a discussion of heirloom varieties, because a lot of people are getting into this, especially something like tomatoes. People are growing heirloom varieties of tomatoes instead of just what every farmer out there is growing in the big industrial farming operations. And then finally, you have your slides. You need to be working on your slides for your final project. This is due in week 7, but you ought to be working on that this week too. You have 2 milestones graded right now. I'll get the 3rd milestone graded as soon as I can. Everything has to be turned into slides because you need to think about this final project as a presentation, just like you were presenting this information to a group of people. So you're going to have slides that have points on them, like an outline, and then you will be discussing these. And if you have any extra information that you're not going to put on the slide, you put that in the speaker's notes. Make these readable, have graphics, have pictures, have data. So this is a real presentation. Okay, we'll be talking about this some more next week because next week it will be due. All right, I'm going to go into a little bit more information about certain things that I posted here right now. So for one, genes equals traits. A gene is a segment of DNA, and that segment of DNA codes for a particular trait. And I have 3 right here, and these are all single gene traits. The one on the left is albinism. There are different types of albinism, but this type of albinism is a recessive trait in the melanin production gene. And you see this little boy has lighter, or girl, I'm not sure, it has lighter colored skin because the melanocytes are not producing melanin. In the middle picture, we have Marfan syndrome, which you can tell what happens with this. The person gets extremely tall. They have long hands and long fingers and long feet. They continue growing even into adulthood. They have terrible problems with their backs and their legs, and they have a hard time getting around because they are so tall. But they also have another very serious anomaly, which is weakening of the aorta, which is the artery that leads from the heart. And so this can actually rupture. And there's nothing that you can do about that. Then we have the sickle cell anemia trait on the right-hand side, and this is where the red blood cells sickle into this pointy shape when there are low oxygen conditions. The problem with this is red blood cells are supposed to be nice and oval shaped, and they slide through capillaries very easily. When the red blood cells sickle out like this, they get stuck in the capillaries. There's no oxygen exchange to the tissues, and therefore the tissues can even die if you don't get this corrected pretty quickly. So these are single gene traits that I've listed for you here, but there are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of traits that we have, thousands and thousands. Okay, epigenetics is, well, epi means above, and so this is above genetics. You have all the information that you need to make you as an organism, whether you're a bacterium, a corn plant, a rat, or a human being. You have all of your information in your DNA in every single cell. So think about that for just a second. Then why do some cells look like heart muscle cells, and some cells are brain cells, and some cells are skin cells? And okay, you get that? And then all those different cells make up tissues, and the tissues make up organs, and then all the organs make up organ systems, and then they make up the organism. So how does that work if you have all of the DNA code in every single cell? Can figure out how to say that. This is through epigenetics. Which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off in every cell is really important. And this is gene expression. Which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And that determines what a cell is. Okay, this is epigenetics, this control of the genes. This is an extremely important area of research in genetics right now because we understand a lot about our genes, like which genes are where, on which chromosomes. We understand a lot of that now. Not everything, but a lot. But the problem is we don't really understand how to turn them all on and off and how this all works. So that's what you will learn about. A part of this you'll learn about in that video with the mice and also with the young twins and the older twins and what their genes look like over time. This is a very interesting area of research right now in biology. We've got the nature versus nurture issue. So how much of you, whatever you are, whatever kind of organism you are, depends on your genes, and how much of you depends on the environment and what has happened to you and the nutrition that you've received and the care that you've received. How much of this determines who you are? This has been a debate for a long time, more than a century now. Ever since we started learning about genetics, this has been a big question. What role does your genes or nature serve to produce you as an individual, and what role does the environment produce who you are? And I've included a video in the announcements for identical twins who were separated at birth, and it's interesting to look and listen to them to see how they're the same, and maybe to also see how they're different, because they were absolutely raised totally differently. All right, the importance of sexual reproduction is shown here by the Duggar family, and I know all of you have heard of the Duggar family, but they have a lot of children. I don't know, is it 19 or 20 now? I don't know, it's a lot. And some of those kids have kids now. But one thing I want you to notice, there's the mom and the dad there, and then you see all the children. All right, you need to notice that none of the children look exactly the same, and that's because of how sexual reproduction works. A sperm from the father unites with an egg from the mother, and you get a unique individual that is produced. And so that's what you should see in this picture. And the thing is, the uniqueness is not just in how they look. You also have uniqueness in the biochemistry in each of these individuals. I'll give you an example. So my sister and I look a lot alike. You can tell that we're sisters. And we, of course, were raised in the same environment. But our biochemistry is not the same. So, for example, we both like Mexican food. She can't stand cilantro. Cilantro tastes like soap to her. I do not get that sensation when I eat cilantro. She can't stand anything with sucralose in it, which is a sugar substitute, because it tastes like chlorine to her. Well, when you look at the molecule of sucralose, it has chlorine groups on it. When I taste it, I do not taste that chlorine taste. Our biochemistry is different. So it's not just the looks, it's the entire being that is unique. So biochemistry is different, structures are different, the appearance is different, and that's what you get with sexual reproduction. Many, many different offspring. And that is extremely important to biodiversity, because you're hoping that individuals in that population are going to be able to survive no matter what kind of challenge comes along, whether it's a pandemic of COVID-19 or anything else that could come along. The species is hoping through sexual reproduction that some individuals can survive. And that's the purpose of sexual reproduction. Then we have biodiversity, and there are big discussions about this and why this is so important these days. Biodiversity is important in ecosystems. How many of each individual and each species are present in an ecosystem is terribly important. There has to be a variety, because each species that is present has a certain niche, fulfills a certain role in the ecosystem. And so this is tremendously important. And if you take out one, you are going to change the ecosystem. If you take out an apex predator, like we have in so many ecosystems around the world, because they compete with us for whatever is there. Plus, they could be harmful to us. When we take out an apex predator, that changes the whole ecosystem, all the way down to the plants that are present, because you have too many prey and they eat all the plants. So biodiversity is tremendously important, and the way that we have biodiversity is through sexual reproduction. We have differences in the individuals, we have differences in organisms to make up ecosystems. So you'll learn some more about that and how sexual reproduction is important to biodiversity this week. All right, and as always, if you need anything, just let me know, m.sigmon@snhu.edu. I am here to help you. I'm here to answer questions. If you want to run something by me before you turn in, please feel free to. I will be glad to look at it. I'll be glad to give you some advice. So just let me know if you need anything. And I hope you have a wonderful week this week.